everyone, and welcome back to the Dwarven Tavern. We are Dr. Jeff Goins.
And Lyric.
And they are Lyric Goins. We're royalty now, apparently. And this time we're doing a talk because we've had some experiences of late that has kind of given us pause. And the subject, plus we've been asked a few times by a couple of people here and there, how to be a better dungeon master.
Yes.
Or game master, or
however you put it. Narrator.
Castle keeper in Castles and Crusades. And
I like that one. Monster manager, as in the Tavern Club, my own very comic.
Monster manager.
Very own comic.
Imagine an imaginary menagerie manager, imagining managing an imaginary menagerie.
You're supposed to do the warm-up before the video.
That's what toy boat. So we've come up with a couple of ideas, and it's our own practices, kind of a best practices, sort of thing.
Because we're the best.
We are to us. I love playing. I was gonna with myself, but I'm not gonna say that.
Too late. It's recorded.
I just did. It's recorded. But I love dungeon mastering, and I dungeon master no matter what game it is. Even though I don't know what it is in Traveler, but we play a lot of different games, and I'm always the dungeon master when I dungeon master. And it doesn't matter what you call it. The first topic, or the first best practice, is to avoid metagaming.
Now, we've talked about this in several other videos, but we're going to glance over it again just to make sure that it's fully understood what we mean when we say metagaming. So metagaming itself is when you have an experience outside of game that has influence on the game itself, when in reality it shouldn't. So, for example, Dad's favorite scenario that he likes to bring up quite frequently is, well, I think the Dungeon Master wants us to go down this particular hallway because he keeps driving us in that direction.
And that's player metagaming, and that will get big deductions on the experience points because when the player starts metagaming, that character is not in the game anymore, so they don't get any experience points for that because it really makes me mad.
But another thing that a lot of people don't realize is that Dungeon Masters can also metagame.
Absolutely.
100%. So, what do you mean by that, Lyric? Well, for example, when the Dungeon Master is perhaps leading you in a very specific and very obvious direction, and you can just feel like that you could have done a million different things, but the Dungeon Master kind of forces you in that direction. Do you have a specific example? For
whatever reason. Yeah, in the example of just something as simple as the Dungeon Master doesn't have that part of the dungeon completed. I mean, that's super common because people want to play. Everybody wants to play.
Yeah. And
the Dungeon Master doesn't have time to finish it or whatever. And they, you're like, oh, I want to go down the left hall and see what's down there. And the Dungeon Master's like, I don't think you should do that.
Yeah. Yeah, like that. Like when the Dungeon Master says, "Oh, are you sure?" is kind of it's a staple for Dungeon Masters to do in game. But if it's like it has to be done in a certain way that I cannot formulate in my head right now. Where the Dungeon Master is like, well, I'm not quite sure, like when they're asserting their own opinion on how you should play.
Right, yeah. When that happens, it's just garbage.
The best way to describe Dungeon Master metagaming is to say railroading, where they very specifically put the game on tracks, and they are the conductor, and they force the game to go a certain way, because they have a plot point that they really want to use, and the gamers are just not doing it.
Yeah, because if you want to turn left, you want to go down a left hallway in a crossroad. You want to go down a left hallway. It's not done. You say, well, I'm going to go down the left hallway. It's like there's force field blocking it, and it's like, well, oh. Okay, well, I've got, I'll disintegrate. That takes care of the wall of force.
Well, turns out it's not a wall of force, it's a wall of disintegration.
It doesn't work for some reason. or it goes down, but you still can't go through because there's this really strong wind preventing you from going down there. Oh, yeah. Well, I've got a spell of free action. I can go through wind, water, thorns, whatever, without any impediment. It's like, yeah, but now and after, 2 or 3 tries,
yeah,
you start to understand in this little meta gland that you have in your forehead that the dungeon master doesn't want you to go down that way.
Now, it truly gets into metagaming if after a couple of tries the DM just says, oh, you just can't go down there.
Yeah, you just can't.
You just can't do it.
Why? Because you can't.
You just can't, because I said so. Like, when the DM pulls out the because I said so card, at that point, I feel like they're not a good DM.
Yeah, you're forbidden. It's like, that's not the dungeon master's job.
No.
To forbid.
No.
So how would you remedy that? If you were in a situation where the left corridor was not completed, what would you do to keep them from going down it without metagaming, without railroading?
I wouldn't stop them. The thing is that in order to avoid metagaming, a lot of people are afraid of doing something which is called improvising. Improvising is the best way to avoid situations like that. And what do you mean by that, Lyric? Well, it means that when you go down a track and you don't want them to go down the track, you make up that track as you go. Ba-bum.
Ba-bum, yeah.
So when you are having a situation where they have to go left or right and they choose the one where you haven't completed it, guess what? That other track could be even more dangerous, and it's going to be more dangerous because you're making it up on the fly. That's
good. Here's another way. They've got this T like this, or this X, this crossroad, right? And you don't want them to go down this way. It's not there when it's not done. They don't see it.
Hey, there's
and
a
they
thought.
can pass by it because it's obviously covered over by a false wall or an illusion.
Right.
And then as they come back, or when it's done, then maybe the wall falls away or somebody bumps into it or something.
Or the illusion breaks. Or
the illusion is broken. Or somebody leans against the wall, they take a break there, and there's actually not a wall there. And
they just fall through.
And then it shatters, and you see this whole new part of the dungeon I had just finished. But they don't know that. Mm-hmm. So there's a million different ways. This is just 2.
Yeah.
Very, very good methods to avoid metagaming. And the whole thing to me, the whole reason that I hate metagaming is I take the gaming very seriously. I love the game and the immersion.
We take gaming very seriously here at the dungeon. At the dungeon
tavern.
That's where we are right now.
At the dungeon tavern.
No, I was just going to say dungeon.
At the dungeon. But we take it very seriously, not so much ourselves, but we take our gaming very seriously. And in
you can't
doing
take yourself
so,
seriously,
I can't. I tried once and it hurt. I left a mark.
Yeah, it's called balding.
Balding. This is from taking yourself too seriously.
That's why I've got such luscious hair right now.
Don't try this at home, Elvis impersonators. The whole point of this Dungeon Masters against metagaming, I guess that would make us demam. Dungeon Masters against metagaming. Demam is that whisker hair in my face. Imagine that. Is that it completely ruins the suspension of disbelief.
Yes.
Right?
And that's true for metagaming on both sides.
Yeah.
Because you're removing yourself from the experience, which is why it's called meta. You're putting who you are in the experience to break that fourth wall, which that fourth wall is there for a reason.
Yeah, once that fourth wall's gone, it ruins the flavor. It ruins the mystique. And that is the worst thing possible, other than actually getting out a sword and cleaving one of the other players. That would be the worst thing possible, I believe.
So when you're avoiding metagaming, how can you go about making the game interesting? Like, for example, if we're still using the tunnel situation, how do you narrate that tunnel to be just as exciting as if it did twists and turns or had other entranceways, but those entranceways led to unfinished parts of the dungeon?
Well, in my experience and my practices with the whole unfinished thing, because I ran a dungeon a long time ago. Wow, it really was a long time ago. I don't even like to think back that far; it gives me a headache. And they were chomping at the bit to get through it, and it was all I could do. It was like, tripping at the top of a set of stairs and trying to run all the way down without killing yourself. Well, that's how I did this so fast. And there were times when there would be areas of the dungeon that were not finished.
Yeah.
And if that was the case, then the door or the side tunnel or whatever, it just wouldn't be there.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be visible. And sometimes, there were several occasions where it wasn't, we never came back to that. And it just wound up not being a side tunnel. And then what I would do, since I already had the map largely drawn for the DM, is I would give them another way further down the line to get into that part of the dungeon if I wanted it to go.
That, or you could just simply make it a dead end. Like,
a dead end,
it becomes a maze.
Dead ends are...
And why wouldn't there be any dead ends in the middle of a cave, especially if it wasn't man-made?
Yeah, and there have been actually times when I would just say it's unfinished because the stone would stop. There would be uncut or semi-cut blocks on the floor and dirt, from when they were actually, because, these tunnels had to be, if you think about it, you put yourself in there, these tunnels actually had to be dug.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't finished, sometimes they would just run into something that wasn't finished. And I would tell them that. That's not metagaming at all. It's just unfinished.
No, it's unfinished in the game.
Yeah,
so.
In the game, it is unfinished.
But the next part is, it ties into this, and that what I was saying about how do you narrate that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get past that into a part where the dungeon gets more interesting, where you have monsters and loot and all that stuff.
Are you talking specifically about like plot points and things like major points?
I'm more talking about the passage of time between those plot points, because it's important to know that when it comes to metagaming, another way to avoid that is to make sure that every point that is important needs to be dwelled on, and that the points that need to be glossed over need to be glossed over. And it can be really hard to differentiate between the two.
That's absolutely right. And players are notorious for finding, as you're mentioning something that wasn't important to the story or to your
very tiny
insignificant detail. Like, what is that nail doing in that wall right there? I'm gonna explore it for an hour and a half.
Right, players obsess.
They obsess on things that mean nothing, and it may be something. Maybe the way you said it. It may be
the fact that you even mentioned it.
The fact that you mentioned it, they think it's something. And I had a story from a game a long time ago, because I had a player that loved to obsess over pointless details. So I gave him one. He was climbing up this rock structure.
Foundation.
It was a natural formation of rock, and it had what would you call it? Recesses carved into it. And they were about 5 feet apart, so he had a hard time getting up. And in one of these recesses, he found this white. It was like curved this way, and it was also curved this way. So it had two arcs in it, and it was a hard bone-like material, but it was kind of shaped like a crescent moon. And he found it was way back in there. So he thought it was some kind of a key or something, and he obsessed on it for just a long time. And I let him go. I let him go with it. And finally, when he reached the top after obsessing on this bone thing
for years.
It felt like years. He found an Etten, I believe it was, that had been slain or got to the top and died somehow, and one of its toenails was torn off. And so what he discovered was that he had been, like tasting and doing all these experiments and tests and stuff over a piece of a torn off toenail that was enormous because it belonged to an Etten. And he felt rather foolish, but he's like, is that like worth anything? I'm like, it's a freaking toenail. It's got fungus. You might be able to start a mushroom garden from it or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Athlete's foot.
Yeah, boy.
From an Etten.
Yeah, boy.
Delicious.
Yeah. And make a soup. But the trick, the point of the Dungeon Master is to understand what's happening in the time that you give your narrative about what is happening. So, because I had a Dungeon Master one time, and I know I'm wafting into another story, but
it's fine.
Just to make it brief, our arch nemesis was a demon, and he would make an appearance. And as soon as we saw him, my buddy and I, as soon as we saw him, we would draw our bows, and he was supposed to make the speech, or he was going to make a speech, make an appearance in front of people, and we wanted just to kill his ass, just kill him. That's all we wanted to do. So he would come out and make the speech, and it's like, oh, that's him. Grab my bow, and he's like, no, you can't. I'm like, why not? Is there something restricting us? Are we being restrained? He said, you just can't right now because he's talking. It's like, okay, so I'll shoot him in the mouth. What is the deal? I want to kill him. I don't care who knows it. I'm not trying to be sneaky. I'm like, and he's like, no, you just can't right now. And he would give this speech. It was supposed to be given its information or something. This happened like 3 times in a row. Every time he would appear and make this blah blah speech that the Dungeon Master wanted him to hear, we would be like, we just want to kill him. We just want him dead. I want his blood on my arrow, just period. And he'd be like, you can't. And then at last, when we did get the opportunity to kill him, we didn't think he was going to let us.
Yeah.
So he came out and he makes this appearance and he comes out and says, my people. And we're just sitting there by now because we can learn. We have the ability to learn. It's
Pavlovian technique.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going to be able to kill this guy. He's not going to let us. And he comes out and he says, my people. And he looks at us like we're idiots and says, well, shoot him. Like, oh, okay. Grab her knife. Yeah, I hit. Like, okay, he's dead. You did it. It's like,
yeah.
So
one of the ways to avoid that is you can do it. You can take it 2 different ways. If you need something, we'll do the first one first. That's
a great order in which to do things.
Yeah,
I like that.
I thought of that all on my own.
Yeah.
We can do it regardless of what you wanted for the story. It may have been important, but it obviously didn't happen that way, and your characters just don't know. For example, if this bad evildoer has a gigantic speech, and they kill him before he gives all of the monologuing up, then the characters just don't know that information. And, later on down the road after that campaign's finished or whatever, haha, that's a joke. Because campaigns are never finished.
Never.
Then you can, reveal that they just didn't get that bit of information from the dude when they were supposed to. And just give it to him in a different fashion.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And one of those fashions is maybe have them in disguise and then reveal that they're the big baddie. That's one of the ways to do it. Another way, another way to do it is to...
I did my monologuing. You're shooting me with a bow right now.
Another way to do it is, I've kind of fell into this trap before where I've been the DM and I have a very major plot point and my characters just want to play.
They're terrible for that.
I'm setting up a fucking cut scene and they won't sit still. They keep trying to press A to skip. But another way to do it is to make an in-game barrier from preventing them from attacking. For example, I had a princess who was, she was a rebel and part of the rebel alliance under the king's nose. And the king was killed, and then the coronation of the princess was coming up, but she knew her younger brother was trying to kill her. So it was this huge plot, twisty mess of grossness that he and a few other players had to go through. And at the end of this, tension building moment, the princess actually sang a song. And when she sang the song, it not only gave them buffs to protection, like they had a +2 to AC, a +2 to attack, a +2 to all of their saves. Like, it was a really gigantic buff. It set off all the red flags for my players. And they're like, oh, can we do things? I'm like, no. What happens is when she starts singing, you guys feel entranced and you can't break your eyes away from her. She's so intoxicating in her song. It's almost like a siren song, which is what it was. And what that meant was that all of my characters fell under the charm. And it was only going to be broken by the major plot point which had to happen, which was her brother's assassin stabbed her from behind and she died.
And that was actually a very amazing thing, because we were
she didn't
instantly
die. She didn't die. She was saved by the players.
We were instantly turned from wanting to do something like kill her or whatever it was we were wanting to do. We were instantly distracted from that to, well, can I resist? Can I resist this feeling? And we had to roll some stuff, and none of us could until.
And it was all done by the book. It wasn't anything like, oh, you just can't break free because it's just magic. And I'm like, no, you guys actually can roll. It's cool. Roll for it. And if you can break free. And I think Ian was able to break free, and he was just, she was up on a stage. All of her, the Rebel Alliance was in this cathedral or whatever. Yeah. And she was singing to all these people like, we have been brought down and we have been taken over, and we will not stand for it anymore. We will do our best. We will fight. And then her last word was fight. And then a spear came through behind her and, lifted her up in the
Yeah, I thought that was very well done.
Thank you.
And that's a really good example of good dungeon mastering, because her narrative actually incorporated the players and their actions, because that's the one thing that a lot of dungeon masters miss is, while your character is making an appearance, your NPC, bad guy or whomever, other things are happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And that includes the players wanting to throw a rock or a dagger or a howitzer or something and if you can throw a howitzer at somebody, you probably just let them do that. But all this stuff is happening at the same time, and you don't, as a dungeon, even though you have the control of the dungeon master, you don't get to say, no, you got to wait.
Yeah. Without
giving them a reason.
Because cutscenes, as much as we love them in video games, they don't exist in tabletop games.
Or real life. Yeah, RPGs kind of emulate real life.
If you absolutely
to an extent
have to have a plot point. Like I did for the princess being hurt. And she was supposed to die. But I had my characters, they were involved in that scenario and they were able to heal her. They removed the poison. They patched her up. They took care of her. And eventually the character that he was playing at the time married her and became the king.
She was lovely. It was a lovely honeymoon. We went to Niagara Falls.
So they
enchanted some tourists and made them jump.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Glossing
over that.
They didn't feel anything. They were just tourists.
Glossing over that. The story still revolved around the characters while still covering a major plot point. So if you absolutely have to have something happen in your game, make sure that you have all of the adequate information to go along with it. And what I mean by that is like the magic, the rolls against it, what the DC is of all of this different information, because there's still a chance that this plot point could be ruined by the players being dumb and wanting to jump in headfirst. Because that's a problem that we DMs often face.
Yeah, especially in Niagara Falls.
Stop it.
Which actually brings us up to the next topic, which is when to roll and when to gloss. A lot of players seem to get irritated when you make them roll for mundane things.
Yeah.
And the Dungeon Master has to have a good grasp on what to make the characters roll for and what to just allow them to do or get away with in some instances.
A great example of this is actually a video game called Until Dawn. And I know this is not D&D or Pathfinder or anything like that, but Until Dawn is a very cinematic video game. You get immersed, and it feels like you're watching some sort of animated TV show or a movie of some sort. The problem that I have with Until Dawn is that a lot of the things that it makes you interact with in the game are really stupidly mundane. So, for example, if we have a book laying here, then you have to press a button to, and then. It's like, it's really, really dumb. It's so dumb. So, like, instead of having, oh, okay, I want to pick up the book. Okay, well, I want to flip to page 1. That is all one action. That's how it should be.
Open book. Press E to open book.
Right. But Until Dawn, you have to press a button, press a button, press a button, press a button.
Jeez.
And it's a lot of unnecessary actions. And that can happen in tabletop games, too. When you have to, you can say, like, I'm doing this thing, and your DM may actually have you describe every single detail of doing the thing. Like, for example...
I'm going to take a drink of my pop. Roll for it.
Or, like, building a fire. Like, okay, well, how do you build a fire? Like, you want me to actually give you the Boy Scout definition of how to build a fire? It's a little unnecessary. And it wastes a lot of important time that could be spent on other bigger events. That's
a very good point and very good examples. I had a game way back when
because
with the same
old.
With it. Yeah, it's true. I've played a lot. Where the dungeon master was the same one that wouldn't let us shoot at the guy. We were trapped on a ledge. It was like Karathras in Lord of the Rings, where they were all up in the. Only we were stuck up there in the mountains in the cold.
Yeah.
And he said, "Well, how are you going to keep warm?" And we looked at each other, my buddy and I, and we're like, "Well."
Heard saxophone music.
Well, we got torches and oil. And he said, well, the torches won't heat enough for that. And it made us go through this whole, it took us like 2 hours.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, so what happens? And he said, well, you stay warm. It's like, well, I thought this was important. He said, no, I just wanted to find out what you were doing to stay warm for the night. Like, I could have just said, build a fire. And he said, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well then I should probably punch you. Right in chest. Boom.
And it can go the other way too, where you actually should be spending time and information on something that's happening in game when the dungeon master just kind of doesn't talk about it.
I'm going to lasso that rock up there and climb up the rope. Okay. So when you get there.
But... or something like, okay, well, I'm gonna row upstream to fucking get to the salvation that I need. Okay, well, when you get there, but wait a minute.
But I can just do that. It's not a challenge at all.
Okay, I'm gonna go in the forest and I'm gonna look for food. Okay, well, when you find it, but wait. I can use survival. I can use some sort of hunting technique.
I don't have to use my skills. There's just like a pork chop tree growing right next to me.
I don't know. Like, I've got all these feats and skills that I could be using.
No, you're in a pork chop forest. There's meat hanging from the trees everywhere. So
or like it's the equivalent of saying, okay, well, you guys are faced off with a bunch of goblins. Okay, so we're going to attack them. Okay, well, instead of saying, well, roll for initiative, and then actually going through the battle, be like, okay, so after you kill them, it's like, wait a minute.
But I want to fight.
We're done.
What the fuck? Give me. Yeah. So my thought, as an experienced dungeon master, is that if it's kind of like the Roger Rabbit theory, only when it's funny.
Yeah.
When the characters attempt to do something, this is my own personal maxim. When the characters attempt to do something, if it could turn out funny or otherwise interesting, make them roll for it, even if only a 1 will fail.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, so I'm going to take this, like if they're in espionage in a bar, in a tavern or something, and they're trying to listen, and they want to grab these 6 ales and take it back to their table while listening, that's a roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, boy,
it's concentration, it's a strength, it's
balance,
a fucking... Yeah. So,
Yeah.
3.5 is the best example of this. It has that gigantic skill list for a reason.
Yeah.
You should be able to use all of that information. And while that skill list may be dumbed down or non-existent in some other games, those are still very important things that you should include in your game.
Absolutely.
For example, gather information. You're not just going to sit in a bar and hear everything that you need to hear just by being there. You need to actually pay attention to what's going on around you in order to gather that information.
Yeah. I don't know what the plot is, but I do know that this guy Garthus over there, he's got gas like you wouldn't believe. Yeah.
So, but that leads us to our next point, and that is, as the dungeon master, how well do you explain the situation? How detailed does the environment need to be? How much does your character know about the villain that they're facing off with? Getting the balance between over-explanation and under-explanation is very important, because when you don't provide your characters with enough information, then they can get frustrated and have a very hard time playing the game.
Oh, yeah, because they don't know what to do.
Right. Or if you over-explain, you're not giving them anything to do.
Right.
So, for example, we'll use our beloved EM as a... EM?
EM.
Yeah, I was thinking Ian and Dungeon Master at the same time.
The EM.
Ian as
the evil master.
He's a fantastic dungeon master, but he makes you work for it.
Oh, yeah.
And in one situation, we ended up in a basement where there was this pool of water. And in this pool of water, it was a very long room with a bridge on the pool of water. He described it as, you go down the stairs. You are now in a room. There's a bridge going this way. And there's water. And we're like, okay, so is there any other entranceway? Is there a door over there? Is there a door over there? How deep is the water? Is it like a well? Because for me, what I thought it was is we entered this room, there's like maybe 10 feet of stone and then water. And then there was, an entranceway to another room over that way. Mm-hmm. He meant it as one oblong, very long room with a bridge over top and water. Like it was like a circle.
Really? I didn't get that. Okay. Now I understand.
He explained it to me afterward. Yeah. So, because he said it was 600 feet from floor to ceiling.
Right.
And there was 300 feet of water.
I know, because I was teleported. My character was teleported to the top and fell all 600 feet and was fortunately rescued by the engineer with the platform gun.
Deep Rock reference.
Deep Rock.
So as we were playing this and as we went along, we followed the bridge to the end of the other room. Quote unquote, the other room. It was one long room. And when we got to the end of the bridge, we tried to push our way through the wall. And we got all of these mystical, magical spells going, and we actually formed a doorway 15 feet into the stone, and it led to nothing. And we were all very confused.
Yeah.
And the problem is that our dungeon master hadn't explained it to the level of detail that we needed to understand the environment.
Right.
Because even though we were not there, our characters were there, and they would have been able to grasp that entire situation.
Yeah, that's the thing that, even a simple hand-drawn map would have been a huge boon. But it was omitted, and I apparently didn't understand it to this very day. So you have to consider what the characters know versus what the players know, and don't let the two get confused. Don't let them.
Honestly, the characters may know more, and that's where we get, higher intelligence than the players themselves may have.
That's hard to play.
Yeah, it's very hard to play because we're
all of my
dumb.
characters are smarter than me. Everyone, you got an intelligence of 7. How in the hell am I going to do that?
Oh my God!
I'm going to have to go back to college. But yeah, and knowing what to explain to the characters as to what the characters know. The players may be like, sitting at what there was something, I can't remember what it was, but there was something that Ian gave us that we were in the scene with. I knew exactly what it was the instant I came in, but my character had never seen anything like it before. So that was on me to role play. What?
Was it the Aboleth?
No, I think it was the Joker.
Oh, yeah.
This enormous catapult. It was a Dwarven.
I still don't know what was going on in that scene.
Yeah. It was a giant Dwarven build catapult, IKEA catalog. It was
Show the latest furniture from the dwarves.
It was a Flargurg.
400 years ago.
And it didn't work.
Yeah, and there was this huge mural of all of these races coming together to find an Aboleth, and the way that he described it, it left so much detail out that we couldn't really process the information to the accuracy that we needed to understand what the fuck was going on.
Yeah, exactly. So the Dungeon Master's responsibility is to give the characters, the players, enough information that their characters will see what is happening, because you, as the Dungeon Master, you are the character's senses. You know what they smell, what they feel, what they taste, what they hear.
Which is why I don't like saying that the Dungeon Master is God, because the Dungeon Master is so much more than that. They're actually the world that the character lives in.
Yeah.
And that includes the senses.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the other side of the spectrum, when it comes to under-explaining it, it's that. When it comes to over-explaining it, it's the railroading. This full circle.
Yeah.
When you give your player too much information, then they don't really have anything to go off of, and that you compensate by having A. And that's no fun for anybody.
Yeah, exactly. And speaking of no fun, there is some I don't know if you'd call it contention or confusion about when would be a good time to end things, when to let things stop.
Right.
Sometimes there are natural breaks in the action where the characters in game, where they can take a break and rest for the night or whatever. And then there are times when the game is supposed to end.
Yeah.
And we've had games. We've role played a lot. We've done a lot of gaming, and there are times when we end 2 hours early or 16 hours late. And
cancel plans for tomorrow because we're gaming all night.
Hold my calls. This battle is about to begin. And
Clarice, cancel all of my appointments for the rest of the day.
Clarice. So. That, I think that's an organic thing. I think you just got to be organic with that and feel it when it happens and go with it. Don't force it. Because nothing, to me, there are very few metagaming, but there are very few things that ruin a game as quickly as a Dungeon Master forcing things to happen when they're not supposed to.
It goes back to the what we were talking about earlier about the railroading. When you're forcing the game to keep going, then it's no fun for anybody. Especially when people have to leave, or everyone's tired because you've been gaming for 16 hours straight.
Yeah, you can see it in your players' faces.
Yeah, like if they're checking their phone, okay, can't.
Or if they're like,
yeah, can we keep going? Come on, okay, I gotta go. Okay, okay, bye. And then they just leave. Come on, Dad.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'm gonna roll. But yeah, that's the thing. You gotta be interpersonal communication is an important thing when you're role playing, because when your characters, when you can see them getting antsy or you can see them getting bored or whatever, it's time for something to change.
Yeah.
Or and that inversely can also happen is when you don't have anything else ready. You're at the end of your page and they're going.
Right. Like if they're super involved in the game, guess what it's time for? It's that special word, improvise.
Improvise. Yeah, absolutely. So you can give them a little extra. You guys have done that to me a lot more than you know. I would just be like, I'm okay, and we're at the end, and here we go, next section. Okay, so let's go, keep going.
And okay, a great way to get around that is to take a small break when everyone is still excited and they still want a game and they still want to get more into it, like, oh, we're at this point of the tunnel, we should keep going. You can be like, okay, well, we're going to take a bathroom break. I'll order pizza or, whatever.
Food breaks always welcome.
Right.
I don't know a gaming group that wouldn't be like, oh, all right, time to break for snacks. And they'd be like, no, snacks, great.
So, and on top of that, if you take a small break, that can lead to a bigger break because giving that tiny bit of break gives you enough breathing room to both prepare for this session and the next session, as well as giving the players enough time to calm down and get ready to stop.
Right.
Another thing you can do is you can say, okay, well, I don't have anything planned, but I know Dad really wanted to run the Starfinder campaign. We can switch to that. How does that sound? That way everybody can still get the gaming that they need while you can take a break as a dungeon master.
Yeah.
So playing round robin with campaigns is always a great way to get past that.
Absolutely. Or like you said, just be upfront with them. I don't have anything else ready. Let's do something else instead. And 9 times out of 10, they'll take you out in the yard and beat you with something until you have something prepared.
No, they won't. 9 times out of 10, everyone's cool with it. They're like, oh, well, I really want to keep playing, but that's understandable.
Yeah.
And if they're not, then you
jerks. Josh has done that a couple times. He'll have a thing when he dungeon masters. Because he was kind of new at it and he didn't have very much.
He likes to be what I call over prepared, where he has, okay, if they roll a 2, this is what happens. If they roll a 3, this is what happens.
And that doesn't give him much time to prepare a whole lot. It's just
but he's
what
very
is prepared
thorough.
is prepared a whole lot.
Yeah.
And then we would be playing and we're chomping at the bit and ready to go. And he's like, well, I don't have anything else prepared. And we're like, oh, okay.
Well, then I'll DM.
Because
we all still want a game. It's pretty obvious.
It's still early. Only 3 days have passed. So, we can do that. And everybody's cool with it. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool ways to do it. And so just read your players.
Yeah.
And
there was something else that I wanted to mention, and that's what happens when you drag it out. A lot of the time when you drag it out and you really, as the DM, you really want to get to a specific place and you want to make sure that when you come back to game, you know where everybody is, you know what everybody's doing. And for example, you always go back to the same inn. Like my inn that I use in all of my campaigns is a Laughing Dragon. And the Laughing Dragon is where everybody comes. That's where you get all of the notices where the princess has been captured or this dungeon needs exploring or whatever. You go back to the Laughing Dragon. Bad DMing is we always have to come back to the Laughing Dragon.
When you have to.
You have to.
Have to.
And this can happen even if we're in the middle of exploring a village on the other side of the sea. It's like, okay, so what happens is, okay, so everybody's done, and then, okay, so the village is empty, you guys get on a boat and you go over, and then so,
really?
2 weeks later, you get back to the village, and then we end up at the Laughing Dragon. Okay, we can stop now. It's like, why didn't you just us in the village?
Why do I have to do that? I was wanting to bang this chick that I saw in the village. I gotta get on the boat again? What are you talking about?
It's like, also, 2 weeks have passed, and we didn't have to roll once on the sea? Like,
there were no encounters?
What?
I didn't have to pee?
Right, nothing happened. Nothing at all happened.
This big.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, and so that's a lot of downtime. That and actually in the new Pathfinder game, I don't know how is downtime handled in 5e.
See, I've only been playing 5e for a couple of sessions, and I've only played it as a player. So as a dungeon master, that's information I'd know. So I don't know.
I reviewed 5e and all of it's gone. And most of it's gone.
I mean, if you want to grab it, I'll look it up while you're talking.
Okay, where is it?
It's right there, isn't it?
How to do this?
Oh shit! I think Ian still has it.
Ian still has the player's handbook. Okay, so I have some 5e books, but I do know that in Pathfinder 2e, which I am all about these days, it has very specific moments of it has a very specific purpose for downtime. There are specific activities that you can only do during downtime.
Yeah.
And
well, downtime is specific. It should be used for fixing your armor, making camp, regaining your spells,
sharpening your mace,
nourishment,
yeah, peeing, sharpening your mace,
taking care of that diarrhea, you know, all that stuff,
polishing your ointment.
You know, the important thing.
And the important thing is that you know, if a large amount of time passes or has to pass between getting from, you know, wherever your character's left off to the point where you want to stop for whatever reason, you got to throw them a bone. You got to give them something. And most of the time when I'm DMing and the characters are wanting to stop at a point, okay, that's fine. Wherever it is.
Yeah.
And if I have to spend the next 15 minutes making notes so I don't forget anything, then that's fine. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, that's on the Dungeon Master to make sure that the game is consistent.
And to say they have to be here at this point at this time before we can stop the game it's honestly kind of silly.
Ridiculous. It's ludicrous.
Silly. Yeah.
So recommendations to avoid that is honestly just make sure you can even have a designated chronicler. You like I was for the Major Saints campaign that we always talk about. Is I was the chronicler. I made sure that I had every single point written down. And yes, that did slow down the game a tiny bit, but it was well worth the sacrifice because now I can look back on my notes and say, okay, well, this is what happened.
Yeah, or Josh with Aloon.
Oh my God.
His chronicling.
He's a bard in
his
game.
chronicling was actually part of the game, and it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Because he kept losing his books. And it was
My
books!
Okay, guys, I have to go back because my books. We totally
we're
understand.
Done, man. We're out of the dungeon. We survived. But my books. Like, but okay. Are you going to pay us extra? Well, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll pay you.
So,
it was great.
If you chronicle, that's a good way to avoid any lost information. Another way to do it is just to, after any sort of major conflict, even in conflict, even in the middle of a battle and things are winding down, no one has the energy to actually do the fight, don't just prematurely end the fight because that's no fun for anybody. Just end it right there. End it after initiative and say, okay, so what's happening is we were on the third round of this battle with the Goblin King. Roll for it. And actually, start. The next campaign will start with fiery passion, and it will end it with satisfaction.
Yeah, you can end the game at any point.
Yeah.
At any point. All you have to do is take a snapshot.
That is good advice.
Yeah, because everybody, I mean, back in my day, there were no cell phones with cameras. We had a bird inside a box, and we would describe it, and it would chisel it.
That's a Flintstones reference.
Yeah. But no, back when we first started playing, everything was to handwritten notes, no computers or whatever. And there were some of the best notes ever. And now it's so easy to take a snapshot of the playing field if you got minis out.
That actually is something that happened with my gaming group. Is we game at an abandoned mall, and one of the pipes burst and filled the courtroom with the food court area with
I remember you
with the most noxious smelling gas of the world. It was just old moldy water and it was really gross. But we had to move. And I took a quick a picture of where we were on the map with all of our minis, and then we moved. And then when we moved to a safer spot to be, we're like, all of the other people were like, "Oh my God, where was everybody?" Okay, so this is how I remember. I'm like, I have a photo.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh my God, that's so smart.
and another tip would be when we're getting ready to end, the Dungeon Master takes their phone and says, "Okay, what were you doing?" And you just film that. And go to each person. You don't even have to film it.
You got like a voice memo. Just say, so we were last left this, then the other thing. You don't even have to write it down. You can just keep a recording of it.
Take recording notes and be done with it. And it's a simple thing.
Send it to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's a good group of advice for you.
That is a group of advice. What would you call a group of advice? It wouldn't be a gaggle. It would be
a word.
a word of advice. No, that's but one. That is but one.
I'm
like
not
a
sure.
skillet of halflings.
I guess or a clot of gamers.
A clot of gamers.
That's what it is at Gen Con. They're just clotted up like the veins of the fucking convention center.
Yeah.
Anyway,
we'll our next show we will come up with the answer. I'm gonna make a note of that. What to call a group of advices.
This has been a bit of advice for you from one dungeon master to the next. If you guys have any advice that you'd like to give to any fellow game masters or dungeon masters or whatever, please comment below and we'll make sure to share it.
Absolutely, yeah. Because we're always we're learning ourselves all the time.
Yes, I mean we just started getting into 5th edition. We're gonna start doing Pathfinder 2nd edition, and we'll let you know how that goes too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm still in the midst of the reviews for the Pathfinder stuff.
Yeah, and if you guys have anything that you'd like us to check out, you can either send it to us or email us about it.
Yep.
Check us out on social media, all that stuff. We'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. So, on that, this has been the Dwarven Tavern, and I am your host, and she is your host, Dr. Jeff Goins.
And Lyric.
And we wish for you to want for nothing but adventure. And at first I feared it.
Then I charged.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
The time